Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Matthew Ward, and I'm on the Startup Junkie team. Before we get into this, would really appreciate if you could like, share, subscribe with really anyone you know. We put a lot of work into this and just really want this to get out there. So thank you in advance. Today, with our co-hosts, Jeff Amerine, Talley. How are y'all?
Doing great.
It's March Madness.
Yeah, it's March Madness.
Could life be any better?
Couldn't be.
The madness is about to begin.
And it's St. Patrick's Day Eve.
Eve,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's a dangerous combo.
Which means we may or may not be drinking today.
No, we will be tomorrow.
And today we have a really special guest, Palmer Hayes. He is an avid golfer. He used to play at Wichita State or Roberts. Is big into real estate and overall is just a really great guy. So really appreciate you being on, man.
Well, why don't you marry him?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the intro. I don't know if I'm deserving of the very special guest, but I do appreciate it. 2 weeks ago we probably got on the calendar and scheduled this, and what are the chances it was right on the Hog game? We were talking about that a little bit earlier, but definitely happy to be here. So
yeah, before we hop into it, who do y'all got winning it all this year?
I've got, and I hate to say this because my heart is always with Arkansas. My other team, my alma mater, Navy, didn't make it. Freaking Colgate won the Patriot League. Who knew? But the two that I've got going all the way are Alabama and Houston.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Caleb?
Well, given that this will come out probably after the national championship, will probably sound silly. But Arkansas, just got going all
well
that.
done.
I know we won't, but if we do, I'll both win my bracket and win in life. So,
And I'm hoping
why
you're
not?
right.
Yeah.
I want to be wrong on this.
exactly. It's like when you go to the casino and bet some money on Arkansas to win the national championship.
And this might just be the year.
Yeah.
Because there's time, they've broken my heart 12 times this year, and 6 in particular when they had double-digit leads, but not that I'm bitter.
They're all learning experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like Houston. I'm not sure about the guard Sasser if he's available or not, but really great defense, great guard play, and number one seed. So try to play the analytics a little bit.
Did Memphis
I
put
think
it
they
on
can
them?
do it.
I think they did, but it was get some momentum going, really humble the guys before you get in the tournament.
Get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
What do you think?
you can put a spin on anything, I guess, getting punched in the mouth right before the tournament. But I'm going to go a little off the beaten path and go with the Duke. I think they're really hot. I don't love Duke. Not a team that I typically root for at all, but they're pretty hot. They've obviously got the history.
Yeah.
I will really wish that we were the last team to beat Coach K last year. That did not end up happening.
Nice. Yeah.
That would have been a cherry on top.
Yep.
That would have been our national championship.
Who will Duke play? Who will they beat?
in the championship game?
Yeah.
I think Alabama's got a good shot to be there. I hate being on the one seed train, but they're probably the best team in the tournament. So.
Yeah, as long as there's no law enforcement.
I was just about to say they
got some shooters that take a key player of theirs off the team. Not that he should be taken to jail. Not that I'm bitter about that at all. But anyway,
Yeah, they got some issues, but they can play on.
they
the court.
can play. The
For
dude
sure.
he's got ice water in his veins.
Yeah, he's probably going to get drafted to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Good jaw, right?
Anyway,
They would mesh really quick and really well.
Anyway, so tell us your Palmer. Let's hear your backstory, your genesis. What's the Palmer story?
So I'm born and raised in Fayetteville. Love it to death. I argue that I will never leave Fayetteville. We'll see if that ends up being the case in the next 20 or 30 years. But it's an awesome place to be. I went to play golf at Wichita State for 2 years, like Matthew had said, and then I transferred to Oral Roberts University. And this is all right before COVID started swinging around and happening. So as soon as COVID came upon, golf is obviously not a sport that makes a lot of money. So scholarships are also up in the air with that as well. So whenever that time rolled around, I was like, man, I feel like I really need to find a meaning in work, not necessarily playing golf, because I had a lot of teammates that would play and they were very good golfers, top 100 amateurs, you can name it. And they would go and they would try and play professionally, and they would try for 4 or 5 years, really run their well dry as far as emotional stability and financial stability by trying to make it to the next level. And I saw that, and I didn't see that for myself. My wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time, we wanted to build a family, and we wanted to be put somewhere, and Fayetteville is a pretty darn good place to be put. So I looked around, and when COVID came upon, I was like, I need to get to work. And I knew a couple people in commercial real estate. And they'd always seemed to really enjoy it. And so from talking to them, I got a great opportunity at a firm up in Bentonville prior to the firm that I'm at now. And I just jumped all over it, and I've never really looked back. So
That's awesome. Most important question of the day. Did you have to play golf with a mask on outside?
no, I did not have to play golf with a mask on outside. But I'll tell you, the worst part about COVID era golf was right at the beginning when they were putting pool noodles at the bottom of the pin, so the ball that you're playing with wouldn't touch the pin. So let's say I roll a putt in, you have to keep the pin in, and it would hit the pool noodle sometimes and pop out. Not every course did that, but that was by and far
That was
the
when
worst.
there was fear that everything you touched.
Lysol your grocery bags.
But I'll tell you what, golf was the best sport to play at the time.
Well, because
you were outside,
right? Yeah.
and it was spring whenever COVID rolled around, and everybody's kind of figuring out what they do. People are working from home. We don't know if we're working at all. Let's just go out to the golf course, and if we get a call, we'll figure it out. So at the time, that's right when I jumped into the business, and it was interesting. But golf took off, and it's still riding that way.
Yeah.
So now you got the LIV controversy and the PGA Tour controversy and all that kind of stuff going on. So
politics and golf
who knew it would be a political
goes together
sport?
like peas and carrots.
Yeah, well, where there's money, there's politics, and where there's
Always.
money, there's problems sometimes.
Yeah,
so
no doubt. No
Why
doubt.
commercial real estate?
I've always liked the idea of eat what you kill and be able to go out and provide value for these businesses in the area. So if you think about a typical deal that we'll see, we're either working with a tenant that needs to find a space, whether that be a startup or a Fortune 500 company, a manufacturer, or just your typical QSR, which is we use QSR in the industry. Really, like think of a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, quick service restaurant is what that means. So we can touch on those businesses, and we can learn so much from what they do, and also be able to solve one of their biggest issues at the time, which is typically finding a piece of real estate that works for them. Each user is different, so each deal that we do is different, and just the variety, I think, is the biggest thing. The variety and the ability to go out and get the business and just have control of it and run it to the finish line. There's a lot of value in doing that. So
You have to be comfortable with the sales process and with rejection. Had you had experience in that before?
I wouldn't say I had experience in sales prior to getting into the real estate industry, but what I did have experience in was talking to people who had a lot of business dealings. I grew up playing golf, and typically at the golf courses, you're talking to business owners, you're talking to individuals who own real estate, you're talking to individuals who are having to make those decisions. And also when I was in Wichita in the summers, I was a broke college kid, I caddied at one of the nicest courses in Kansas at Flint Hills National. And they had a really good program there for college kids. And I got to, Coke Industries is based in Wichita. So a lot of those executives would come in. And I'd spend 4 hours with them on the golf course picking their brain and also making money at the same time and reading their putts and unfortunately trying to find their balls in the weeds too often. I got really used to wearing high white socks and looking out for snakes because it was a thing.
You got rattlesnakes up there.
Yeah. And like, not only do you have them up there, they're everywhere too, especially when you're in the weeds. If you get a good group, you're not in the weeds too often, and they won't even tell you to look for their ball. But through a 4-hour round, you can learn a lot about how they've got to their position, why they're there, what they're doing. And just from talking to people in that experience, I think it's made the sales process more comfortable, to answer your question in short. And I'm never too scared to get a no. If you tell me to call on a car with no wheels on the side of the road, I'll call it. And if I get no, that's it.
That's good. That's good. So it's a lot about tenacity and just being comfortable with talking to people, right?
Yeah, it's about being comfortable talking to people. That's a big deal. Being able to ask the questions that might not seem obvious. That's also a big deal. But also understanding what the business's needs are, whether that's a landlord that has a specific need, a seller that has a specific need, or a startup that has a specific need. And maybe they don't even know what they need yet. And it's my job to advise them. I would say we are more consultants than we are salesmen.
Sure.
I think residential is probably very different. Commercial is a lot more specialized. So our market, for the longest time, it's been very generalized. And what I mean by that is you would have one individual who would work in 5 different product types, whether that be industrial, retail, office, land. Now we're getting large enough to where you can justify just doing one product type.
Gotcha.
And for me, that's industrial and land. That's pretty much all I do. I'll do some national retail sales here and there for pad sites, land. But other than that, really don't do a ton outside of industrial. We have another gentleman in our office who handles that. So what I mean by that is we're consultants to be able to provide the information that they need and ask the questions
in order to make a good decision.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, some of these businesses, especially on the smaller side, they don't know what they need. So it's our job to advise them and get them to that point.
Very good.
Yeah, a lot of folks. Seems like a lot of folks that come in like early stage, idea stage, they don't know what they don't know, and it's kind of asking those questions to not telling them what they need to know, but asking those questions to kind of guide them through that process. So communication and relationship building is like such a core facet of just any part in life. I feel like just being able to communicate with other individuals.
There's a lot of trust that's involved in the process as well. Unfortunately, real estate brokers don't tend to be the most trusted group of professionals around. And I think it's a really big responsibility for us to take that on, understand that, and be able to advise people in a way that enables them to trust us. We have to earn that trust. I don't think it's something that's granted or given off the bat. So with that being said, asking the correct questions so we know how to provide you with the best answer. And it's not always going to be a direct answer. It could be one or two different things, but all to get you to, at least trust us to be able to do the process correctly.
How's the market right now? I mean, given that we've had a couple of bank failures recently and it seems like things are slowing and the Fed continues to raise interest rates, what impacts are you seeing in commercial real estate?
That's kind of the hot button topic right now. Yeah. Over the last 2 weeks, and people listening, this will probably be 3 or 4 weeks down the road, but Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank have both, not Signature Bank of Arkansas, by the way, just a larger group. Signature Bank of Arkansas was very happy to clear that up. But that's been a hot button topic the last couple of weeks. And I think to answer that question in short, it's changing things. It's changing things pretty quickly. I think investors are backing off a little bit, but our market in specific is so separated from a lot of the issues that the nation's going to end up dealing with. I hope, I don't have a crystal ball. And if someone tells you they do, they're lying.
Right.
Nobody knows what it's going to look like in 3 years, but we have enough people moving here. We have enough full pockets. And a lot of the wealthy individuals around here are not afraid to reinvest in our market. Sure. And that's going to continue to keep this snowball rolling. I almost call it a flywheel. You reinvest into this market, more people come, and it just keeps spinning itself up. Right. And so I would say our national interest has absolutely gone up in the last couple of years. But it's changing pretty quickly. End users can still take down properties, but investors are definitely backing off. But rates, whenever they change, it makes things tighter.
For sure. Are you seeing any categories of businesses that are coming in that are surprising to you? Or is it still kind of supplier community and that sort of stuff, or is there other interesting stuff coming in?
I would say all aspects of it are moving forward at a pretty decent rate. I wouldn't say there's one that stands out to me more than others. What has stood out to me within the last year is the amount of private equity and funds that are coming into our market and taking a peek at things. Because whenever you look at, let's take Dallas for an example, there are cap rates down there, and cap rates are how we value a lot of the real estate. It's an income metric. Their cap rates are really squeezed down. So you're looking at a 4.5 or a 5 cap rate down there. Whereas up here, you can maybe find something for a 6.5 or a 7. And so that doesn't sound like a ton, that 2%, but imagine paying 2% more on your home loan. It makes a difference. So whenever those markets tighten up, they look for what's next. 20 years ago, Nashville was next. Right now, we're probably next. And I think a lot of people around here understand that, and that's why they're not afraid to invest in our market. Whereas going to a Dallas or something like that, they want to stay here. So national funds looking.
As you look across, one more question, I'm going to give it over to these guys. This is pretty interesting. But as you look at the categories of the types of space, is it Class A space? Is it warehouse space? Is it mixed use? What are you guys seeing?
So, like I said prior, I'm mainly industrial warehousing space, but I can tell you that the Class A office space around here is flying off the hook. They almost can't build it quick enough. I think a lot of the vendors associated with the larger parties here in Northwest Arkansas, everybody in here knows who they are. They like having nice office space to be able to attract the talented workers. I think that's become a little bit more of a hot topic with these office leases lately. Because you don't necessarily want to come to the office a ton, but it sure helps incentivize it if you're in a nice space. And I think Class B, which is what we kind of consider the middle of the road product, that's stretched out a little bit. So you either have people looking for the nicer, more expensive product in Class A, or you're looking for the more cost efficient product in Class C. But I think generally everything's going just fine right now. I don't think there's one that sticks out from the other.
Gotcha.
So with you being from Northwest Arkansas and also living here now, what's the sell to any outsiders that want to get exposure to commercial real estate here or just want to live here? Like, what's the sell there?
For outsiders, as far as businesses coming in?
Businesses, anybody that wants to live here, just in general, like what are the perks to coming Northwest Arkansas?
I would say what I tell people all the time is when, let's say I've got a property up and it's somebody that I've never talked to before, and it's a vacant property, it's an occupied property, whatever it is, and they're not familiar with Northwest Arkansas at all. They don't know a ton about it. I'll say, hey, the Northwest Arkansas Council, they have a bunch of great resources on their website, as we all know, but there's nothing better than just getting here. So I'll tell people all the time, if you have the opportunity and if the property's worth it, just come to Northwest Arkansas and take a peek at it. And after 8 hours of driving around, or me sitting in the car with you for 4 hours and driving around looking at stuff, you'll have a general feel for it. But our income around here for our expense is great. As far as the population goes, I feel like our incomes are relatively high compared to our expenses, is a better way to put that. And the people are moving here pretty quickly. So
you work with any, like, as you're kind of making that sell, you said ride around for a few hours. Do you like have any folks in the community that you work with or that you said refer people to, vendors, restaurants, like, to try to make that sell?
We typically end up just popping over to Wright's. That's like the easiest. I know there's some.
That's a win.
I know there's some barbecue fans in this room right now, but generally Wright's is a great spot to be. They've got that one in the Pinnacle area now, which has been just a home run for them. I feel like every time we go in there at like 11:30, it's just packed out the door. So yeah, we'll take them to Wright's. Anything in downtown Bentonville is pretty cool too. And just I had a gentleman come in from Dallas yesterday. Perfect example. We drove around for 4 hours in the morning, almost to the dot. And I was like, where do you want to go get lunch at? And we went to Wright's. And I'm like, I got to drive you down to downtown Bentonville. And there's this thing called a bikeable building. And he looks at me like, what does that mean? And for those who don't know, there's a 7-story bikeable building in downtown Bentonville. And just people coming from outside of our market that don't even know what Northwest Arkansas is, coming here and seeing that kind of stuff is just mind-boggling to them.
The Ledger.
Yeah. Oh,
future home of Fuel Accelerator.
Well, we officially moved in yesterday.
Yeah. Hot.
That space is awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Keep plugging that, because that's going to be a good spot to be going forward.
It is.
That's awesome.
The thing that I want to do, though, is next time we have snow and ice, we've got to have like a sledding contest down the outside of that. It's kind of like a death race down those,
Somebody's listening to that and saying, we're going to block that sucker off.
I know. I would imagine the landlords who work for people with names you would recognize would say, "Oh, hell no. Nobody is going to be sledding down the outside of the Ledger." But
did y'all hear what Jeff said last week? Y'all, we better block this stuff off.
Yeah, well, really, I say kind of outrageous stuff occasionally just to make sure they're listening. I haven't gotten any hate
we don't have any
mail
headlines yet.
No, not yet.
I'm on board with that. Hey, no attention is bad attention. So maybe this becomes a very controversial podcast.
Some attention.
Maybe this is a turning point for the podcast.
Some attention is bad attention. So, and if you want an example of that, both Chris Rock and Marlon Wayans have done Netflix specials, and the vast majority of the material is about the Oscars from last year, and everybody knows what's happened. Mm-hmm. That's kind of bad attention. Mm-hmm. That's how to take a $200 and some million fortune and turn it into a single-digit $1 million fortune in one shot.
I still think they might have paid him to do that.
You think so? I don't know.
Maybe. So a part of me wants to believe it, but we'll never know the truth. Yeah. So I'll stay over here, and everybody else can stay on there.
Anyway.
Well, if y'all watched the Chris Rock special and he goes into detail about why he gets slapped, he's talking about why I got slapped. He goes, because I'm the one person that he could slap and get away with it. He was like, all of these other people made fun of him, but he's not going to slap them.
Well, just imagine what I was thinking is Just imagine if rather than it being Chris Rock, it had been
The
Rock. That would have been good, right? You think he's
like
going to prance on stage and smack the Rock? I don't think so.
You get that eyebrow as soon as he gets on stage.
He just sat there and probably laughed at the joke if it was.
Well, you'd have to, right? What are you going to do? First of all, you're not going to hurt the Rock, and secondly, if you tried to slap him, you'd get thrown off the stage.
Or if you did end up getting to slap him, your hand would hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this podcast.
So, and that has nothing to do with real estate, but it's fun.
That's my hot take of the year. I'll stick with it that was staged.
You think it was staged?
Going back
That's my hot
to
take.
what you were saying earlier about folks wanting some of that sexy real estate to attract people to, whether they're in the office all the time or just to have that space. I noticed that too in regards to Ledger when I was walking around, seeing some national, international brands logo on a door and it being like empty, lights off, like they're not actually there, but they've got that space. I just found that pretty interesting that they kind of grab some space real quick so they can have that.
I think some of that's really attributed to how hard it is to find that Class A space around here, back to it flying off the hook. I mean, I think that they are way ahead of where they thought they would be. And maybe they thought they would lease that whole building up as fast as they did. I can't make that statement for them or not. But they're pretty close to at the brim already, if not already there. Y'all probably know the answer to that.
They have like over 200 folks that have leased
Amazing.
spaces.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I mean, that just shows the need for that type of product in this area. And that also shows what you do whenever you tie in a community to real estate. I mean, that's what all these developers, that's what they talk about doing, but none of them really capitalize on that very well. They did it. It's a bikeable building. You can bike to Crystal Bridges. It's the same distance. The ramp is the same distance up as it is to Crystal Bridges, up to 7 stories or 6. So all of that kind of ties in together, and it's really special.
That's a little bit of trivia that our listeners would not have gotten
I'm
otherwise.
certain they did that on purpose too. They had to have.
You would think so.
They do that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I heard that on the James Bell podcast today, actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is that right?
When we all had him
The
on.
Beacon?
Yeah. No, on Startup Junkies.
On ours.
podcast.
when it was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't know that until y'all talked about
I
it.
forgot about that. So, and then looking at some of the projects that are coming down the pipe, whether it be for y'all's projects or like projects you see other folks working on, what's something that excites you?
That we're going to have some availability for once. The last 2 years, whenever people have reached out to us, whether it be tenants or investors or you name it, whatever it is, it's been really difficult to find what they need. If we have a tenant looking for, and the issue is still persistent. If we have a tenant looking for 30,000 square feet of industrial space, it's difficult to find. And when you do find it, you struggle with the expense. You struggle with the timelines. There's a lot of issues right now in finding this. I would say the product that nobody really has, which is that 30,000 square foot warehouse space. So to answer your question in short, the products that are coming on, overall, it's just providing some relief to what we've been facing the last couple of years. Our vacancy rate for industrial, it's under 1% right now, and I think it's gone up just a little bit as of late. I've seen more lease availability start popping up on the market, but that's probably going to provide some relief for us.
Something I'd be curious to hear more about, and nobody's going to know the right answer to this, but long term, 5 to 10 years from now, you can look at all the developments in healthcare and advanced air mobility and the foothold we already have in retail and the developing startup ecosystem, as well as just the amount of inflow of 30 to 32 people moving to Northwest Arkansas a day. What do you think that speaks for with commercial real estate? Like, how does that look development-wise, tailwinds behind it, any headwinds you could think of? Just what are your thoughts around what that can mean for commercial real estate?
So real estate as a whole, if you take a 10,000 foot view at it, it's based on people. Where are people? Where are they located? Where are they coming from? What do they need around them? So if you look at a fulfillment center, you're not going to have a fulfillment center in the middle of Oklahoma. No towns around it, whatever that is. They're going to be located somewhat close to a population base. So whenever you have more and more people moving in here, there's going to be a need for X, Y, and Z. You're going to need a strip center for a restaurant. You're going to need a strip center for an AT&T to go. Mm-hmm. Whether those are boring uses, not boring uses, whatever it is, people drive real estate. So whenever you have more people, you're going to have more need. And that translates to housing, that translates to industrial product, that translates to office, that translates to more businesses coming here. You think of if somebody, a home builder goes out there and throws down 2,000 homes, those light bulbs are going to need to be changed. Sure. Those lawns are going to need to be mowed. Those HVAC units are going to need to be serviced. Those people want to go get food, and they want to have a restaurant pretty close to them. So it's all based on people and where they're coming from, where they're moving to within your community, and what do they need around them. Mm-hmm. So,
as you look at the outlying areas that are still pretty close to the corridor in Washington and Benton County, where are those places that people ought to be thinking about for this industrial space? I mean, is stuff going to be happening in Prairie Grove and Lincoln? Is stuff going to be happening in Gentry and Gravette? Or what would your crystal ball tell you?
My crystal ball tells me that I'll take a step back. Our market has generally been based around I-49 for the last 30 years, since its inception in the late 90s. And if you take a step further back from that, UC 71 business was our main north to south way to get through our market. So if you work east to west from, let's say, East Springdale all the way over to Tawnytown, you can see the age of product change as you go east to west. And you can see how accessible it is change as well, because if you're close to 49, you can get to Bentonville a lot quicker. If you're in Springdale, vice versa. And if you're further away, it's a little bit slower to get there. So I think that our product has grown to 49. And in the future, I think it's going to continue westward. If you look at Highway 612, and 412 bypass, which is that highway corridor, which is, I guess I'll call it a flyover, that's going just south of JB Hunt's headquarters. All of that's going to end up tying into 112, and 112 is being expanded to 4 lanes, and 112 is going to go straight up to the airport. So if you think about the infrastructure and how they're playing that out right now, it's going to move west. It has to. And also we're kind of landlocked to the east with Beaver Lake, and there's just not a lot of growth out that way. If you look at the geography, the land to the west on Benton County and Washington County, it's more flat, it's cheaper, it's developable. So you would think the population center would move out there. And I think a lot of the other product type is going to have to go with it. So if you look at the center of our population, and there's no study out there for this, I'm just making a gross generalization here. If you look at our population center over time, it was probably close to North Fayetteville. If you look at the center of our market, where is the average person located? Probably in north central Fayetteville. And that is slowly moved north. Benton County is not a dry county anymore. Obviously, that's happened a long time ago. But what I'm saying is those little things have all added up to the population slowly moving north and slowly moving west. And I don't think that's stopping anytime soon. The airport's going to be a pretty good place to be around.
And it's been, Highfill wasn't near anything for the longest time. So there's I'll never forget the first time when Highfill was built, and I was living on the East Coast, and I flew back in here to visit my folks, and I'm like, there are no roads in and out of here. Who thought it was a good idea to put this airport in the middle of a cow pasture? And it's like driving out of there, you're like, did somebody not think that we needed a 4-lane road to the freaking regional airport? But anyway, now it's all building up around that. It's building out to it. So I think you're right.
Yeah, and like if you go to Centerton now, you don't know when you're in Centerton versus Bentonville.
It all runs together.
Taking the road going out there, it runs together. And all of these cities, what a lot of people notice whenever they come into our market for the first time, we'll drive them up and down I-49, and they're questioning what city they're in. The whole time they're like, it's all continuous. And that goes back into us just being a metro.
How do we avoid the kind of sprawl and chaos and annoyance that you see in Dallas, Fort Worth, and in Austin? 25, 30 years ago, Austin wasn't a lot different than what the corridor around here in Northwest Arkansas is today. And now it's like driving and being in LA. How do we avoid that?
I don't think there's a great answer to that. I think a lot of the cities are trying to work on that right now. With a perfect example would be Fayetteville removed some of their parking requirements for downtown, so you can do infill a little bit easier. I think a lot of that's based in zoning. So I would say the cities and the municipalities have more control over that than anything else, obviously, because they're the ones approving and disapproving the developments and whatnot. But it is an issue that we're going to have to get out in front of. Obviously, Northwest Arkansas Council is always worried about affordable housing, workforce housing, typically to get that more inexpensive housing for these blue-collar employees, light blue-collar employees, whatever you want to call them. You got to go further and further out. And I think they're trying to avoid that. I don't know if anybody's figured out a great solution for it yet, because these home builders are still going out and buying these 40-acre lots for $50,000 an acre, whatever it is, and building them. And we have a need for it, so I'm not shooting that down at all. But it's going to be hard to avoid. And I don't think anybody has an answer yet.
You teed up one more run on here. I'm sorry. You teed up one that is a sore spot for many of the members of this office. So there's philosophical differences between the way the cities feel about paid parking or not paid parking in and around city centers and Dixon Street and whatnot. And for me, I really wonder if there's been an effective analysis as to what you give away in terms of retail sales tax versus the little bit that you get from, having a Gestapo-like parking regime in some of these cities. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that? What do you think the play is? Does Bentonville eventually have to have paid parking everywhere just because too many people up there? Or what do you think?
I'll interject with a thought that is somewhat related. I was looking at Matthew when I came in here, and I said, I think I'm going to have a parking ticket when I get back to my car.
I get 2 or 3 a week.
This is my point.
I was trying to use the chip reader, and it would not work. So unfortunately,
the library is the place to park. You just have to be ready to hike up the hill.
I just needed to call one of you guys before I freaking came, so I had known that. But I know there's been a parking study done by the city of Fayetteville. I don't know if they've published that completely yet, but it would probably entail paid parking a little bit. Now that ties back to property taxes, et cetera. If I had to say something, I don't want to have to pay for parking. However, it's sometimes a necessity, and I think everybody in this room feels the same way.
So do you think, so let's just say that Fayetteville's got it right. If Fayetteville's got it right, at what point do Springdale and Rogers and Bentonville say we got to have paid parking, no free parking? Because it's mostly free up there now.
Yeah, Springdale, it's not quite as tight as like Rogers or Bentonville is. The answer to that, I don't think I know. I'm not afraid to say when I don't know. I don't know when that becomes.
And I feel like it's a mix between a density issue. Fayetteville has more density,
right?
But also the city of Fayetteville has tied those parking meters and those parking tickets to bond measures, and so they got to have that. They've included that in those bond measures that the community voted on, for better or worse. It was kind of like they leveraged that opportunity to write tickets in order to get that capital to, do some of the projects they were wanting to do.
Who's more the Gestapo about writing tickets? Is it University of Arkansas parking?
The university wins.
They're terrible.
They win.
They win. Okay.
They win.
Right.
They make more money on parking tickets than what they make on commercializing intellectual property.
That would be a great
shot.
If it was close, that would be a great debate to figure out who is worse. However, it sounds like it's not close.
I wouldn't say they're worse. They're just extremely efficient. That if you're in violation, they're going to write you a ticket, and it's not going to be a $5 ticket like the guys in town. It's like $75.
Yeah, it's like $15 out here and $150 on campus. It's like crazy. I got towed so many times my freshman year in college. My parents threatened to take my vehicle away from me.
All 4 of my kids at some point or another went to the U of A. I'm confident it was a materially large percentage of their total tuition that I paid in parking fees.
I believe that.
I wonder if there's on a whiteboard in their warehouse where they park the trucks, and I wonder if there's like a goal up on the board.
I'm
saying,
sure
we got to hit this.
I'm sure those guys are like, woohoo! Yeah, we got another one.
When I was at Wichita State, I didn't realize it, but I parked my car in a I guess a spot I wasn't supposed to, and I came out the next morning. I had 2 tickets. One was at 11:55, and the next one was at 12:05 a.m. and p.m. I was like, come on! He sat there and waited 10 minutes for me to give me one on a different day, and they said sorry. Nothing we can do about it.
But going back to the thought, I'm
sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. I'm just surprised I didn't.
And feel free to edit all that stuff out if you think it will hurt some of our friends and sponsors.
But talking about kind of the housing, the needs in housing, and kind of I've seen kind of a trend here in Fayetteville specifically, kind of leaning towards, of course, for the longest time, it's like apartments, because there's so many need for student living, but the mixed use. All of these projects that are coming in and adding like a housing element to it. So you think about like South Yard over on South School, restaurants, different things, but then there's this, residential element to it. And then what's coming out to 112 where the drive-in was, they're going to put in that fancy theater, some restaurants, but they're going to surround it with housing. So do you see that being kind of how we kind of curb some of that and just like adding
Absolutely.
living spaces into everything, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to curb it. It's a creative way to get around some of these issues, and it also provides the people that live there something to do. I mean, if you think about South Yard, they're going to have three fantastic restaurants, and it's on the trail.
Right.
So people, for those of us who live in South Fayetteville, myself included, we can just pop on the trail.
And part of the ORA as well.
Yeah, it's walkability. Yeah, they're extending the ORA.
Yeah. So I guess all of that together, I think those are cool developments. The renderings for 112, by the way, look fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's seen them. I think that's a great, what I would call like an adaptive reuse of that property. And speaking of adaptive reuses, I think one of the most interesting versions of that right now that we have in our market would be Low Loft. I don't know how familiar you are with them and Brendan and whatnot. I don't know if y'all
Startup Junkie client.
Okay, so y'all probably had them on prior. I'm not 100% sure. If not,
have we had Brendan on?
Oh yeah, we had him on a couple years ago. When it was still
he's worth getting on again because man, they're ramping that sucker up. I would say that's a fantastic version of what I'd call like yet again an adaptive reuse. They're going into whether it's an old beat up industrial facility that nobody can use for some reason, or whether it's a strip mall, not a strip mall necessarily, but like an outlet mall that's had a lack of traction as of late. They can go in and they can reuse those for this flex industrial space, which has been the hardest thing to find for a couple of years. And so
allows them to scale, right? You can start off small with a fulfillment space and then grow into the bigger.
Absolutely. And I think for them, that's probably going to be an incubator going forward. A lot of those businesses, if you think about a startup, your goal is a lot of times, not always, a lot of times your goal is to grow. And so you start with them and you can hopefully one day grow out of their building and you can grow out of their spaces. And I think for them, that's going to be an incubator of some pretty cool business going forward.
I agree.
So I think you go all the way up to like maybe a 1,500 square foot space in what they do. And that's about when you hit the smallest space outside of a low loft. So these cities that typically require you to have it like the minimum of a 15 to 2,000 square foot unit in your building. So I think that's a really cool version of that. I know I kind of went off your question a little bit, but
you just like look at cities where there is greater density, older cities with like larger populations. They've just had to adapt spaces, old spaces. You know, they've got a restaurant underneath and you got an apartment above, and just kind of like getting creative with what's available. So
there's a couple of buildings down here in downtown Fayetteville that now that they've removed that parking requirement can actually utilize some of those spaces that it might not have been able to prior. And I'm not the best to speak on that, but I can tell you it's helping some of those landlords out and being creative and finding stuff. But Fayetteville's pretty constrained on a couple of different items, housing being one of them, industrial being the second. I mean, there's really nothing down here, no development to speak of in Fayetteville due to just cost. It's pretty expensive to develop some of that kind of product down here. Whereas if you go to Springdale Rogers and maybe Lowell as well, it's a little bit more inexpensive to do just because of land values and whatnot. And also sewer caps and capacity are a big deal too. So,
one of the ways we like to land the plane, so to speak, on the podcast is to ask our guest to go in their time machine, go back. You're a young guy, so you don't have to go back too far and have too much gas in the time machine. Back maybe before you went to school, back while you're still in school, before you began this journey. With the experience you have now, what advice would you give your younger self?
Really, I'm going to think on that for a second. I would say it would be leverage the people that I'm meeting throughout Northwest Arkansas on a day-to-day basis. We're changing so much and so quickly that these people they tend to move around and grow within their companies or start a new company, whatever it is. And y'all see that probably all the time. Someone just one thing, I'm going to complete that, get on to the next. With these startups, it's almost like an itch they got to scratch. Keeping in contact with those kind of people over the years and just building those relationships. Even though I'm in that instance where you're saying look back in the time machine, even though I'm a kid, just growing with them and understanding what they do and keeping that relationship intact. Because I went out of town for 3 years and definitely lost contact with some people. Granted, I think it was good to go out of town. However, that'd be the one thing.
What's the secret to being a scratch golfer? That'll be the final question.
There's no secret. It's just put a ton of time in.
Right. It's the 10,000 hour plus rule. Right?
It sounds cheesy. I think real estate has a ton of parallels to golf, and you get out what you put in.
Yeah.
If you're on the range and you're grinding on it, and granted, I was lucky. I played since I was a kid.
Right.
I probably had a golf club in my hand before I was walking. You get out what you put in. You got to hit a lot of balls. You got to go have fun too, though. And I think real estate is the same way. You got to grind. You got to know the metrics off the top of your hand, like X, Y, Z, 42 million square feet in Northwest Arkansas. You got to know that kind of stuff. But just doing it every day, being a part of it, thinking about it all the time.
If our listeners and viewers want to hear more about your firm and what you're doing, what's the best way for them to find that out?
We have a really solid LinkedIn page. We typically post about our deals and what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I would say the best way is just give us a call. Get in contact with, whether it's me, Cameron, Clinton. Give us a call and just. And
what's that number and what's that website?
My phone number is 479-466-8499, and our website is bennetcre.com. So that's 2 N's, 2 T's, Bennet.
Gotcha.
And our firm's Bennet Commercial Real Estate. So that would be the best way to get in contact with us. We got a good website, good LinkedIn, but I always encourage people just give us a call. We'll shoot shot for a little bit and figure out what you need. So
awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Appreciate y'all having me. Thanks.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.